Okay, I am doing the Nevada home tutorial. This is one of the easiest Nevada paintings that we do. So this is gonna go pretty quick probably. All right, so let's go over supplies. All right, so you're gonna need some white and black for sure. You're going to need some of the dark ultramarine blue. You're going to need some of the light cobalt blue. You are going to need, let's see. We're gonna say just a tiny scotch, just a tiny amount of the phthalo green, just a little bit. And you're gonna need some yellow, just a little. You don't need too much yellow. It's really only for the tree. So just a tiny amount of that. And oh, poop. I don't think I have any of that color. We have that rust color at the studio. I don't have any here. So I'll just be making some, but you'll need some brown too. So white, black, both blues. You just need tiny amounts of the blue colors, a tiny, tiny amount of the phthalo green, yellow, and brown, no red. So I'm doing a bunch of tutorials today, so I've got all the paint colors on my plate. You will also need, we have tiny Nevada stencils. So they'll need a Nevada stencil, unless you want to pre-trace these on the canvases, but I usually have them trace the stencil on with a Sharpie. And I don't think they need a piece of chalk. No. Okay. Oh, maybe they do need chalk. They might need some chalk too. So, all right, brushes. You're gonna need a big brush, big square. You're gonna need probably the small filbert. And small filbert, big square, and little round. Let's see, I think I might have a little stencil. Let's see, I have one of these wood ones. It's too big. So we do have, like I said, we have Nevada stencils in the stencil bin downstairs. I'm just gonna sketch it out. Hi, Bingo. So they're gonna start out by laying their stencil down, and sharing is caring. I usually give out one stencil per couple, depending on how many we have. We should have plenty. Okay. So, like I said, they're gonna trace their stencil with chalk or with Sharpie. Okay. All right, and then we're gonna start painting in our sky. So we don't get super detailed with this painting. Like I said, it's one of the easier ones, and I think people enjoy that. So we're gonna start off with our big brush. We're gonna make a nice pale blue, so white and a little bit of that dark blue. And I want the sky to be a little on the streaky side. So I usually tell them to start the horizon line just a little bit above where the state turns and goes up, okay? But I'm gonna lay in that line, and then I'm gonna come in here and just use a little bit of paint and just do like that, just messy, okay? And then they can clean that paint off their brush, and they're just gonna grab some white, and they're gonna start blending the white on top of that color that they just laid down. And this should create some streaks, make it look like a streaky sky. Now I'm painting on like acrylic paper, and so it doesn't blend quite as nicely as the canvas does. But I still got some streakiness, so it'll look probably a little softer and nicer on a canvas. But they can go completely, they don't have to stay in the lines. They can go across these lines because that Sharpie pen will come through their paint. Okay. So they're gonna lay in the sky, and now we're gonna mix up a pretty color for the water. So to make that pretty turquoise blue, we're gonna use some of the light blue and some of that green to make a really pretty turquoise, and add some white to it. And I kind of like to do the same thing down here. So I'll add a little bit of that turquoise, and then I'll use white on top of it. Now I'm not going to go all the way down to the bottom of the state, because we have our rock formations that we're going to build and our ground and stuff down here. So I'm going to streak that in. So I like to add the turquoise, and then I like to grab just a little bit of this dark blue. And I like to come in right up underneath where the mountains will be later, and add a little bit of dark blue, kind of work some streaks of that into the water. What are you chewing on? What are you chewing on? We just don't want the water to be like totally flat, like a flat color. I want it to have some color in it, some depth, some highlights. So, all right. So from here, you might want to take a little break Or if you feel like they're moving at a decent pace and they weren't applying the paint too thick, you can move on to the mountains. So the mountain color is our dark blue. I like to add just a little bit of white to make it cloudy. And then some black. So it's kind of a grayish, or it's kind of like a dark blue, black. But I like a little bit of white in there. Okay, and then when I do mountains, let's see if I have something I can do with this on. So I have a little spiel that I do with mountains so that people can create like a natural looking mountainscape. So I like to show them like do's and don'ts. So like on the whiteboard, I show them 3 different styles. Like don'ts are to come in and do mountains like this, right? Those are angry mountains. So those are don'ts. And then people kind of get a kick out of this. I call these Dolly Parton mountains. If you just do 2 of them, you can fit like a little but you would be surprised how many people will do mountains that way. So what I typically have them do is I have them start with like a focal mountain, and it doesn't have to be right in the center, but we don't want it going up at such a high pitch and then down to the horizon line, and we don't want it to look hilly like this. We want to stretch it out and not make it too tall. So like one mountain should take up from this end, from this point to this point, should take up a nice large amount of space. And then from that mountain, then we start creating mountains that are next to it, whether they be taller or lower. But they want them to be spread out. So that's kind of a good way to show them no and natural. So, like I said, I usually do that on the whiteboard. So I'm going to start with my focal. They can come across if they want and do the base of the mountain first. And then create their focal mountain. Maybe mine's right here. So I'm spreading it way out. And maybe I want the mountain over here just kind of disappearing off the edge. They are going to want to stay in the lines with these because this color will cover up that black outline. Just going to make this one a little taller. Okay, and my next one, maybe I'll make this one a little shorter. So kind of practice your mountains. Then if they want to take that color and add any like extra shadow down here below in the water, you can. Okay. So what I'm going to work on next, I'm going to bring in the land. And this is where I said I don't have that rust color, so I'm just going to use some of my brown, a little bit of yellow, maybe a little red. You can use the rest shade, maybe a little bit of yellow with it, maybe a touch of brown. We're just kind of going for this tan sort of color. And we're just going to lay it in right here at the bottom. And we're going to be putting rocks and everything on top of this. So it doesn't matter if a little bit of that blue shows. Or you could just have them stop the blue where you want the land to be, and then that way they don't have to fight the blue. But once you're here to this point, I would probably take a break and let this all dry. If you get, like, if you had to take a break already, for the sky to put on the mountains and all of that, you might want to keep going at this point, and you might want to have them go ahead and do the black around the state. So it kind of depends on the speed of your class. If they were just zooming through that first part and you didn't have to take a break, you could take a nice break now. But all they're going to do is just paint the outside of this black. I'm not going to do that for this tutorial. But anyway, I'm just going to make these lines on the outside. Okay. So my paint's wet, so I'm going to give it a little dry. Okay. So what you're going to have them do now is we're going to work on the rocks in this whole ground area down here. So they're going to want to put in a few rocks, and we have some rocks over here on this side, some rocks over here on this side. So it's kind of up to them how many rocks they want to put in here. But we definitely want our rocks to break the ground line, so they're going above that line. Maybe I have one up here. And then I have another big one taking up some room here. And another one kind of pushing out here. And I'm just going to make the tip of this ground down here, I think maybe a rock. Okay. So there's my rocks. We're going to paint them in like a medium shade gray. Not too dark, not too light, just like I said, kind of a medium shade gray. You can use filbert for this. These rocks kind of get blobby until we highlight them. If you wait and have them do the black at the very end, like they don't have to worry about staying in the lines, which is kind of nice. Okay, so I've got the dark gray in there, and now they can distinguish them from each other by using some white, just a little. They don't need too much white for this, but they're going to come up on the top. I'm going to rub a little line around the top edge, and then they can use that brush to just lightly pull that highlight down just a little bit from the top. Also, fingers work really well to kind of blend and soften that highlight into the gray. And if they go a little overboard with the highlight, they can just always come back in with some of that gray to help blend it in. All right. Now I am just going to take like a little bit of my brown and just kind of streak a little bit in here just so it doesn't look quite so flat on the sand area. Okay, and then we're going to let those kind of chill for a second. We'll come back in, we'll put some bushes in there, but while those are drying up a little bit, we're gonna work on the tree. So I'm gonna take my round, and you would be using, I would use some of that rust color and mix that with some of your brown and maybe just a tiny bit of black. I'm just using brown and black. Guess I could put some red in it. But we're just gonna come in here and nestle our tree in here somewhere. I mean, it can be coming out of the back side of one of the rocks. It can be coming out of the land area. It can go over one of the rocks. But it's gonna come up nice and tall. So it's definitely important to use just a bit of black in with your mixture just to get that darkness so it covers everything behind it. All right, and then I'm gonna make, oh, this plate, man, it's messy. I'm gonna make a nice dark green. So I'm using the yellow and the dark blue, really dark. I'm gonna use my little round, and I liked when doing trees, I like to come in and have them make some just lines. It's just gonna kind of keep them on point so this tree doesn't get huge. I'm gonna leave some of that trunk showing. But this is gonna tell me where to stay in, like where not to go out, majorly anyway. Okay, so I've got those in there. Now I can come in and maybe just add a couple little touches at the tip. Maybe just pull out a few little wisps from that line. This tree, it has some of the trunk showing. So I'm just gonna move down and use those lines as my guide. Just some little wispies off of that main line. If they want, they could bring in a few extra in between. But we want to leave some of that trunk showing. And this base coat looks a little funky. But also, to make this tree look real, like it has a front, like we're not just gonna see the side strokes, so we want some of those little strokes kind of going down and then out. So, like if I were to do it over here where you can see really well. And I would show them this on the whiteboard. So not only do I want the strokes going out, but I want some here in the front kind of coming down too. And then out to the sides. Like that. And like I said, they can add in a few in between. Okay. All right, so and then what I like to do is take like that color that they used for the tree trunk and add a little bit of white to it to lighten it up. I have this light color here already blended. But I'm just gonna come in with that light color and just in a few spots where I see that tree trunk peeking through, I'm gonna give the left-hand side just a little touch of highlight. Now when we put on the highlights on the tree here in a sec, it's gonna all kind of come together. Now my tree is sitting here on the ground, and so we have a little shadow cast from it. So I'm just using a little bit of that brown to start, because it's nestled down here on the ground. So I'm going to use a little bit of that brown where it's starting, but the rest of the shadow is going to be cast across that rock. And so that's going to be the gray. And I want this to be a little bit darker gray because I want it to show up on top of my rock. So I know it looks kind of funky, but when you look at it realistically, it kind of makes sense. So I'm just adding a little bit more shadow down here too. Okay. And if you want to skip that part, you can skip that part. A lot of people don't even notice that part. Okay, so I've got the tree almost done. I'm going to add a whole lot more yellow to that green mixture, just to like pull a little bit to the side and make a brighter green with some yellow. And I'm gonna add just a tiny touch of white so you can see the difference in the colors. Okay, and then this is just very lightly going to be tapped on top of the dark green, letting some of the dark green show through. I tend to apply this more towards the top and let the dark show underneath. I'm gonna go just a little brighter. And that makes that tree look a lot more natural. Okay. So after they get that tree done, then they can come in and use those same greens that we used for the tree. If they want to add maybe some little bushes kind of peeking up in between some of these rocks. I just come in here and kind of lightly pat some of the dark green in a few little spots. Maybe I want to put a little bit down here at the base of the tree. And then I just use that bright yellow color to highlight more at the top. Just light pats. It's a pat, it's not a stab. So if you had them do all this first, this is where they can now finish off the black edges. And then if they want to put the little home or the heart or write whatever they want, they can. They can do that with their chalk and white paint. So, but this is the painting. Like I said, it's pretty simple, but it's fun, and it teaches people some very basic techniques. So, all right, enjoy. I'm done here.